see what base has been prepared, put together by Ukraine, where we see it, how we see it, both qualitatively and quantitatively for this deployment. We could start this dialogue in a more material fashion. Thank you. Any British mass media in the room? Any British mass media in the room from the UK? US. Najlepsze. Dobry dzień. I'm not disappointed. I received them. I got them. The things that are very important for me. And the number who are supporting this is unchanged. And it's a very important and valuable thing. This is our army, support for the army now and after the war is over, and that's important. Then I'm very content and very satisfied that now and later we will be investing together with our partners into the production of drones and electronic warfare, air defense, investing in these and other technologies. I'm not going to dwell on them now so far. Missiles, drones, etc. That's very important for me. That it's going to be done not only now but later as well after the war. It's very important for me also a signal to receive, to have received a signal that we're going to open up platform to produce drones, not only in Ukraine, but that's after the war. And that's also very important for us. That's guaranteeing the expansion of this technological process. What is important as well, these sanctions. After what has been happening in the world, after the signals that we have heard in Saudi Arabia, or from that direction, as far as the sanctions is concerned, and as far as possible lifting of these sanctions is concerned. Very dangerous signals. Today, everybody is confirmed. Nobody from the partners present, at least there, is not going to lift the sanctions. On the contrary, we're emphasizing the continuation of the sanctions and the introduction of new packages. As far as the troop contingent is concerned, I just believe that many leaders have their own vision. That's honest. That's to the truth. There are leaders who say, we don't have the right to forget about NATO. And I agree with them, because this is the simplest infrastructure, the clearest one. And again, let me just repeat myself, but it's the cheapest infrastructure. Instead of building a new infrastructure, whole infrastructure in Ukraine, there is a clear infrastructure of security of NATO. It's there. But what we have. This is a question with regard to NATO. It's not quite active. But there are leaders who always support this direction. There are leaders who always say that there can be security guarantees similar to, akin to what other countries have when there's an aggression occurs. A number of countries join in, but join in at full strength. I don't want to go into details of this. This is a bit too early. But then there is a foundation, a base that is based on the Ukrainian army and on the contingent present in Ukraine on the battlefield, in the air, on the land, and on the sea. And we believe that Ukraine will propose an algorithm, propose the type of dialogue, and I think it'll happen in the next 7 or 10 days, based on the meeting that President Macron has already announced. And we will be working in a friendly manner, maybe arguing, but on the platform that will be already prepared. So we will propose this basic strategy, base foundation strategy. Thank you. Next. Therefore, I'm happy. I'm content. So in the center, please.
Good morning, Didier Loras from the Agence France Presse. For 2 questions. The first one, are you optimistic regarding the capacity of the United States to accept giving Europe the air support it requires in case of European forces are deployed in Ukraine. And my second question, one of your advisors, who is one of the active negotiators today, told the AFP yesterday, and in between inverted commas, that we do not want a force, interposition force. We want European soldiers ready to fight in Ukraine. Do you agree with that?
Let's just do the second part. As far as my advisor is concerned, yesterday at the press conference with President Macron, I heard the same question. But just somebody was talking about some advisor, nobody named him. But today you're talking about an advisor again. I have some advisor, and the same question. For some reason, an advisor asked yesterday, and the advisor is asking today again. I'd like to understand what kind of advisor is it, and what is meant by this. We don't want what forces exactly. There are forces that should fight. I'm not quite clear what the question is about. Можете пояснити це?
This advisor was mentioned. His name is Mr. Yavkov, if I remember correctly, Yavkov. So that was him who told us we want European soldiers ready to go and fight. We do not need a peacekeeping force. Thank you very much.
Okay, I understood the question through the interpretation now. Well, look, we are talking about the troops contingent. We're talking about the military contingent, the presence of these for our defense and for the representation of our partner countries in the air, on the sea, and on the land. These are troops. We're not talking about the UN troops. We're not talking about the OSCE. There are proposals like that as well on the table. We're discussing about our position with regard to OSCE. With all due respect, we don't want just the presence of the OSCE there. It's not a security guarantee. They have their own functionalities, but they don't have a respective mandate for that. They don't have a troops contingent, and the Russians are not afraid of them. The OSCE was represented in Ukraine, do believe our experience, from the very beginning of the first occupation after 2014. The OSCE were in Ukraine. They were both in the east of our country. Most of all, they were in the east of Ukraine. They did not have a mandate. They couldn't help us with our guys and girls who were incarcerated on the temporarily occupied territories. They couldn't even enter these territories. This is about something different. We're talking about security guarantees, not just simply about a frozen conflict where at the contact line or at the front line, some people show up who ensure some kind of monitoring. That's not what it's all about. This is about professionals. The professionals who guarantee security for Ukraine.
I had asked another question regarding your optimism as to the capacity of the United States to grant the Europeans the air support requested in case of deployment of forces on your territory.
Thank you. First, we'd like to act together with the United States of America to ensure that these security guarantees could be provided by Europe and the United States of America, and I keep emphasizing that. As well, and the number of European partners depends on the presence of the United States. We'll have more troops if the United States would support. And what the United States would be prepared to provide, I don't have an answer to that because we haven't discussed that yet with them. For me, what's important, and I discussed that with President Trump, I told him that Air defense systems are important for us, but more than once, not just a one-time solution, but a constantly operating system and solution of a total protection of Ukrainian skies. Therefore, we're talking about a high-quality and quantity system which consists of Patriot systems and NASAM systems and others. This kind of presence of the United States of America is very important, and I believe this is also a guarantee, security guarantee, and also the Air Force. We talked about with our European colleagues, but as far as the United States of America, we haven't really raised this issue with them in details yet. Vitaly Sizov, Mr. Freedom Channel. Brussels has adopted a new rearmament program for Europe. They keep emphasizing that Ukraine's participation is unique. It's almost like treating Ukraine like a European Union member, because Ukraine can get this money in part. But how do you view it from Kyiv? Are you also as optimistic as the bureaucrats in Brussels? Or have you received any proposals? Because how they propose it is one of the elements of the security guarantee. Thank you. I would say I'm not sure this is about security guarantees. I would call it guarantee, security guarantee funding in Ukraine. We're very grateful to the European Union, to the President. We're grateful that they are providing us with the opportunity, at least now, as they are saying it, give an opportunity for Ukraine to access these funding programs at the same level of access as for other members of the European Union, such as ReArm program, as we're talking about this, ReArm Europe. So part of the money that is going to be allocated for the defense of Europe, the partners on the bilateral level, the partners will be adding investment into Ukraine from this funding. And that's important for us, because they will be investing into our production. This is one of our priorities for today. Like I said, the artillery air defense drones, because the drones and electronic warfare, we have a shortage of that. You know, we are aware of this gap. 50–60% of what we can do and make is funded, has been funded by our budget, our internal domestic budget, or through our bilateral agreements with our partners within the framework of our security agreements. But also there are opportunities for another 50%, 45–50%, to produce more. Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Julien Perron, Le Point. You said that the American position is unclear. We have the feeling that the position of the Europeans is also somehow unclear, including at the end of this summit, which was supposed to clarify the situation. I would like to know whether for you the position of Europeans is clear, and if you think that they're determined enough.
European position today was unanimous. It was clear with regard to the things that I've already talked about. I do apologize that I repeat, but they're important for us. These sanctions, investing into our domestic production, and in any event, security guarantee for Ukraine, and the participation in the future security guarantee system for Ukraine. Unclear position in terms of troops contingent, it's a fact, but because there's no infrastructure in place. But this is not the first summit in this new format for the entire Europe. So with each summit of that kind, the position in this direction is clearer and stronger. For example, I think it's an important thing today, and we haven't spoken about it today. The Ukrainian position is very clear that the negotiation, Europe should be at the negotiation table about the end to the war. It's mandatory. There are no alternative. It's our clear position. We don't view any alternatives. Europe is very powerful, and it has to have a clear presence around this table. Today, we're all partners in Europe. We have agreed that Europe will be represented by France and Britain, Macron and Starmer. And I believe this is also important. This is a clear position, and we would like to send this signal to all other partners, undoubtedly to the United States of America. And I believe, and I think that each of such summits, each meeting like this, will show us in a clear fashion, much more clearer, our next steps. Not just simply a lot of countries in this system. There were more than 30 countries present today, and we need a joint one. Each country, each leader has their own view. But what unites us is that everybody is in support of, speaks in support of Ukraine for the security guarantees for us. And it's very important they are on our side, that they are resilient, so they won't give up the interests of Ukraine without compromising and giving up the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, without recognizing any territory that Russia has occupied, without legally recognizing any of the occupied territories as Russians. And that's important for the United States as well. We heard from the United States about this or that compromise about the territories. We heard about them in the media. In this Saudi Arabia, we have not talked about it. And it is very important here to have a joint, common position on the European continent, united position. Nobody is going to gift our territories to Putin or to anybody else, because they broke the international law, and they should be responsible for that. This is our united common position, at least those who were present there today. There, your question there.
Hello, Nicolas from RTL Radio. We have understood the distinction between peacekeeping forces and reassurance forces. Emmanuel Macron explained what it was all about, that they will not be on the contact line, but they will be maybe in the cities and will not be a substitution to the Ukrainian army. Could you tell us what it would look like? This is my first question, and I have a second question. A few months ago, you discussed with Emmanuel Macron about sending military trainers in Ukraine. Where does that stand right now?
The tasks of this contingent will not only be the security guarantees, or the security guarantees will not only be their location at the strategic points. I just can't talk about it for the time being, even though I understand certain things already, because we understand that we have certain agreements about that. But there's also a training component. There's production, there's co-production component. There are licenses that our partners have. This is also a solution. It's a long-term, not simple, but Emmanuel and I have already agreed about certain things. And there are licenses that we'd like to receive from our partners in order to produce this in Ukraine. This is quicker, faster, and cheaper, to be honest. And the exchange of technologies, our technologies that we developed during this war with regard to the drones, or as far as the missiles and air defense protection, these achievements and technological achievements we're going to share with our partners who would guarantee our security with their troops' presence. Thank you. Next question.
Hello, Hello, Julie for France 24. We see the way the negotiations are carried out in Saudi Arabia and the press releases which are different according to the different delegations. And we see the way the summits take place at the European level with very little clear progress. Are we too low, we as Europeans? And can you really today trust the Americans?
Compared to the country which is at war, the entire world lives at a slow pace, a very slow pace. And this is not an accusation. These are just absolutely different realities. And I agree with you here. Unfortunately, what we would like to do within 1 week, it takes months to achieve that. What we can do and protect or resolve some issues within 24 hours, it takes either weeks or months again, judging by the equipment that is being repaired. Why we want to do so much in Ukraine, why I always wanted to obtain licenses from our partners, and unfortunately we haven't really succeeded in pressuring the United States in giving us licenses for the production of Patriots. Why? Because it takes a long, long time. We're being hit on a daily basis by missiles, and on a daily basis we have those who are killed and injured and wounded, and we lose people, and it's hard to explain to those people who live in a different dimension and live at a different pace. I don't know how to say that. Well, how can I say that? Live in a different idea of the world. I don't know. It's like, for example, I didn't want to say that, but it's about trust or lack of trust. For example, there's one of the representatives of the United States, America, who works with the Russians, Witkoff, and he says things, and it looks like and sounds like he says it for us, for you. Things, and for us, for Ukrainians, they look in a very abstract manner. They look abstract. This is from another world. For us, these people are from another planet. We are at war. And somebody told me that he's a very specific person. He's always been a business person. He dealt with real estate. And let me give you an example. I believe when he dealt with real estate, as usual, the questions that people had were like, what is the view from the window, where the windows are facing of this real estate, how many rooms are there? But in Ukraine, in order to understand where we are at, our questions about the real estate is only one. Is there a shelter there in this house? See, I mean, this is not just a reproach. This is not just an accusation of somebody. We just live in different realities, different world. We want to live in a normal world, under normal realities, in peaceful realities, and we've been doing everything for that. But it's just our view and our opinion of one thing. Same things are different. And when you say, don't you think it's all going slowly? Well, look, I do believe so. I believe so very much, but we can't push everyone. We are doing as much as we can, and we are trying it very hard. We live in a different time frame, and this is very important. And it's not an issue of trust or non-trust. The issue is that with the United States of America as our partners, Europe will be in more security today, and Ukraine will be getting more assistance today. It's not about trust or lack of trust. It's just absolutely clearly understood pragmatic things. The future should be built on security alliances, not on paper. The fact that Europe should be able to protect itself independently. The fact that the decisions should be made very quickly. Because of this war, here is an example of communication for you. I, for example, with Emmanuel, I speak very quickly with him on a daily basis, and with others. And when the war started, with many leaders, I started communicating in a very quick manner on the phone, because I said, look, it's very difficult for us to order like it used to be. And in many countries, it's been done to this day. One can book a conversation with a leader. Yes, the conversation will happen in 5 days. The war, unfortunately, and the war has won over these approaches. Technologies are helping us to solve the issues quicker. And again, there's no other chance for you. In the first days of the war, I communicated. I had 15, 20, 30 leaders on a daily basis. I communicated with 30 leaders on a daily basis. I've been talking to them on a daily basis. If I were to book a conversation, I didn't have a direct line of communication, to be honest. Well, we wouldn't have achieved anything. It's not the issue of me. It's the issue of our people, of our armed forces, in everything, in all directions, including myself. As a main communicator for my state, I also have been changing this story. This is what digital diplomacy was about. This is what it is now. And you're right, everything is just too slowly. But yes, unfortunately. But everything is already going quicker than before, believe you me.
Hello, Philippe Ricard for Le Monde, French newspaper. Thank you for this press conference. Since we were talking about communication between you and different Western leaders, how would you qualify your relationships with Donald Trump 2 weeks after what happened in the Oval Office, a bit more than 2 weeks actually? Do you trust him again in some way? This is a follow-up of a previous question. And talking about the negotiation methods selected by the Americans, when do you think that you should start having direct negotiations, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, and possibly the Europeans in the same room, discussing the different topics? How come this, the way negotiations are carried out normally for peace is not used this time? Is it because of Putin? Is it because you do not want to see him? What do you expect? What are you waiting for before you move on to the next step?
What blockage? Just one, Russia, and namely Putin. It's all very simple. He's not ready for direct talks. We're not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of any format of talks. We're at war, and not theoretically, but in a very practical manner, unfortunately, and I know everything. What's happening in our country at this time of war. We understand where we have difficulties on the front line. At each kilometer is what we lack. I deal with the weapons and kit. I talk to some leaders, and they were always surprised that I knew more details about what they have in terms of weapons, what weapon system they have, than they did. No, this is not just an accusation. No, I just needed it more than them. And I had to study all that and understood it all and in details. Therefore, I know exactly what we need. I know exactly what we lack. And I'm prepared to any format of talks. I've never been afraid. It's just Putin wants war. What can a man who wants war say at the peace talks? I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit silent there or who's going to swallow all his narratives. I'm not interested. His red caviar and his balls in the Kremlin. Perhaps he will surprise somebody in the world, but for me, they're dinosaurs. They want to eat us up, eat us alive. But we have to defend ourselves, and we have to defend our rights. And therefore, we can't simply say, oh, let's talk, mate. I have nothing just to chat about with him. We have just one goal, to end the war, to force him, if we're weak, at these talks, he will threaten us at any event. And he will do at his best, at the maximum, to make sure that Ukraine loses its sovereignty, which is also the loss of identity with the time. And we can't afford it. We can't allow it to happen. And therefore, I'm prepared for any talk. I'm ready for any talks. But I'd like to be in a strong position. And here is the answer to your first half of the question. What we would like to have from the United States of America, what I need from President Trump. I have been telling him from day one of our talks. For me, it is important to have Ukraine in a strong position at these talks so that we would have a chance to end the war through negotiations, and not just to end the war, but have a fair peace, a lasting peace, so that tomorrow the war won't break out again. What I want these guarantees from the United States. And the issue is not how I view Trump. And I told Trump about this. I told him, look, but in 3 years, there will be another president in your country. And in 10 years, there will be yet another president in your country. But the peoples of Europe, the people of Ukraine, the people of the United States will still go on, will still be there. And if today Putin guarantees to Trump, guarantees something, and you believe this, Mr. President Trump, then after you, he may break what he has been telling you, even if you believe in something. Who is going to be responsible for that? For us. We need an understandable, clear peace that is sustainable, regardless of who's the president, who's the prime minister, who's the leader, regardless of that there are security guarantees that work. And if you are not giving us NATO, and it's exactly you, Mr. President Trump, who decides on that because you're the president of the United States, America. This is the strength and the responsibility, and that depends on you. If you're not giving us NATO, well, then we're please ask you, give us something, give us what is going to work equal to that. I don't know what it is. We have options that we are talking about today. We don't have any other way out. Every day we have to generate some adequate options of security, because our strategic partner is not ready, is not prepared to provide these security guarantees to us that other countries of NATO have, and that's it. And if the Russians violate any agreements and America acts upon that, responding to that, then we all trust America and we all trust the president. And if the Russians, if they violate and they have no consequences, there's nothing happening to them for that. Nothing is done against them, and no sanctions are there. But on the contrary, people are talking about the weakening of the sanctions. Then it's not about trust. It's the issue about something else. What are we going to do with that, with all that going forward? Let's start with the first part of your question, and the second part of the question. If I'd like to hear more details about you, what exactly you're looking at in this second part of the question about the troops. Okay, let's talk about the first one. Look, we had 2 meetings in Saudi Arabia. First meeting was when we arrived there because the United States of America suggested a ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire. That was a proposal of the United States of America. Not my proposal, not our people's proposal. This was a proposal of the United States of America. For us, what was important is to unblock the aid and to obtain the intelligence data, and to demonstrate that Ukraine wants to end the war through diplomacy, so we wouldn't lose people. I believe we have done all that. America has unblocked the aid. We have demonstrated. The American side told us this is going to be a parallel discussion with the Russians. The Russians didn't accept the unconditional ceasefire. And by this, they demonstrated to the America, in my opinion, I believe that after that, sanctions should have been introduced. Okay, let's just make a pause and not just go on and advise America on what to do. They have their own people who can advise. But nonetheless, the Russians have not accepted it. The Russians proposed some other formats. We don't know about that. We can just only guess about that or analyze it, what we're doing. There was a second meeting at which a partial ceasefire was proposed by the American side. By the way, it was proposed what we proposed in Burgenstock. Sorry, it's about this slow pace of time. Your question about the slow pace. By the way, the ceasefire in the sky, on the sea, and the exchange of prisoners and the return of children. There was a decision in the formula of peace in Burgenstock, Switzerland, a year and a half ago. Aren't we slow at ending the war? This is not even slow. This is even worse. But okay, America somehow managed to speak with the Russians and force, in general, them to talk about the ceasefire. And they proposed again this same agenda. Ceasefire in the sky, on the sea, and humanitarian exchange. And we had a meeting about this. This was the agenda of our meeting. We believe that America has a similar meeting with the Russians in parallel, and they have the same, they were discussing the same agenda. But that's their bilateral relations. As far as our agenda is concerned, which we pursued when we arrived there, America, after consultation and speaking with the Russians, said that they're ready not to attack energy infrastructure and the ceasefire on the sea. By the way, now you've just spoke about the Black Sea only, but I would like to tell you the ceasefire on the Black Sea is only what the Russians need. We're on the losing side there. Our corridor there is working. Food security is working without the Russians, has been working for a long time. But undoubtedly, we are in favor for the ceasefire. Therefore, we are prepared, we're ready, both for the energy infrastructure and civilian infrastructure and for the ceasefire on the sea. But again, the Russians are changing some agreements, and they are telling the Americans about the sanctions. About the lifting of the sanctions. Oh, okay. This is, in principle, everything that's happening. Therefore, there are three various different documents. One document is what the Americans proposed to us, and we supported that. Second, another document is what the Americans discussed with the Russians. And then it was posted to the official White House's website. And the third document, that of the Russians, who don't care what the Americans have agreed with them. They have their own position. This is what's happened. Something like that. Yes, they are telling us that they believe that the ceasefire on the sea and energy infrastructure is working. I believe the following. 2 days ago, there was the night when that we didn't have any tax on energy infrastructure. Today, energy infrastructure was damaged in Kherson city by the Russian artillery. This is how it works. As we had 3 documents, there were agreements, and I believe 3 documents, it tells us that it's not quite normal. These are not quite normal agreements, in my opinion, and that's why this is how it works with the Russians. So, therefore, in my opinion, if there was a violation today and there were attacks on hits on Kherson on the railway station, and there was electric infrastructure damage because there were energy infrastructure hits, and in the city of Kherson, a civilian city, it's not a battlefield. And civilians lost electricity. So I believe there must be a reaction of the United States in actions. Our side, what we're going to do before everybody understands who is monitoring what, because I believe it's not clear who and how is going to be monitored. But we clearly understand where the shots were fired, what has been destroyed, and what has been lost. Believe me, over 3 years of war, we clearly see everything. What they used to fire at us, with evidence, with the footage, with video, with everything. We have it all. We will prepare it, we'll put it together. The Minister of Defense received my order in this regard. It will be put together, prepared, and will be passed on to the United States of America. And after that, we expect the reaction of the United States of America, as they were telling us about, that they will react to the violations. Your next question, please.
Hello, Mr. President. Xavier Dal, BFM TV. You earlier on discussed the new investment or French investments in Ukrainian defense. Have you also discussed the possibility not to use the Russian assets, but discuss a plan consisting in guaranteeing to Ukraine, or using these assets as a guarantee for Ukraine to repair the country for reparation purposes? And what is the most useful plan for Ukraine?
We're talking about the investments, and there are several programs of the European Union, and there are respective investments there. There are investments owing to the fact that we've been using these funds, the tax on these frozen assets. You know, we have the right for that. But the most secure one is to have the opportunities and possibility to take these frozen assets and to spend them for what Russia is destroying, to rebuild our logistics, our army, to build shelters for children at schools, at universities, shelters at hospitals, etc. And there are a lot of things like that, because I believe if we don't find a solution, not only to freeze them, but to confiscate these assets, what can happen is that after the end of war, we'll still be fighting the Russians over these assets. But so, to prevent this, to avoid the situation so we won't fight it later, we have to confiscate it now while we can. Dear colleagues, we're talking for 1 hour. We're about to end. One last question. We have one final question. And after that, we end.
Raphaël Grand for the Swiss radio and TV. Maybe a more personal question. What is your state of mind as you're going to leave Paris today? Is this summit makes peace closer in your mind? Or what is the message you would like to convey to the European citizens beyond all the speeches made by the different heads of state?
The mood is normal. I believe that this summit has been a very motivating one. I believe, again, thank you. I'd like to thank Emmanuel again for the organization. I believe my dialogue with the leaders motivates. I believe all leaders are pumped up, are charged up. I believe the leaders would not abandon us, but they will continue supporting Ukraine. That's a bad signal for Putin, and we're not going to give up and surrender. We're not going to surrender our lands, our independence. He will not manage it like this with us in a simple way. And it's very good for us. We're not alone. Ukraine is a strong country who wants peace indeed, but wants a lasting peace, a sustainable peace. That will be a long-lasting one, and that's important for all of us, for our children, and for us. We're all still young. Thank you, dear colleagues. The press conference is over. Thank you. Goodbye.